The wind screamed across the frozen plains of Vareth 9 like a dying animal. Snow fell so thick that a person could not see their own hand if they held it out. The temperature had dropped to 60 degrees below freezing, and even the native creatures had buried themselves deep underground to survive. Yuna stood at her window and watched the white wall of the blizzard. She held a cup of hot tea in her hands, feeling its warmth against her palms. Her small research station was the only building for 300 kilometers in any direction. She had lived here alone for 7 years, studying the strange plants that grew beneath the ice. It was quiet work, lonely work, but Yuna preferred it that way. She had come to this frozen world after the colonial wars ended. She had seen too much death during those years, too much cruelty. When the fighting stopped, Yuna wanted nothing more than silence and solitude. Vareth 9 gave her both. Her station was simple but comfortable. She had a sleeping room, a kitchen, a laboratory for her plant samples, and a small living area where she read books and listened to old music from Earth. The thermal barriers kept the cold out, and her supply drops came every 3 months. It was not an exciting life, but it was peaceful. Yuna was about to turn away from the window when she saw something move in the snow dot. At first, she thought her eyes were playing tricks on her. Nothing could survive outside in this storm. But then she saw it again. 2 dark shapes, struggling through the white curtain, moving slowly toward her station. She grabbed her scanner and pointed it at the figures. The device took a moment to process through the interference from the storm. Then the results appeared on the screen. Life forms detected. Species: Felari. 2 individuals. Vital signs critical. Yuna's breath caught in her throat. Felari, the cat-like beings who ruled the Vulcan Empire. They were proud creatures, standing on 2 legs like humans but covered in short fur. They had pointed ears, sharp teeth, and eyes that glowed in low light. The Vulcan Empire controlled over 200 star systems, and the Felari considered themselves superior to all other species in the galaxy. What were 2 Felari doing on a human research planet in the middle of nowhere? Yuna did not have time to wonder. The scanner showed their body temperatures dropping fast. In 10 minutes, maybe less, they would be dead. She pulled on her thermal suit, sealed her helmet, and ran to the door. The moment she stepped outside, the cold hit her like a physical blow. Even through her protective gear, she could feel it trying to reach her skin. The wind pushed against her so hard that she had to lean forward, just to walk. The 2 figures had collapsed in the snow about 50 meters from her door. Yuna reached them and dropped to her knees. They were old. That was the first thing she noticed. Their fur was gray and silver, and their faces showed the lines of many years. The larger one was male, with a torn left ear and deep scars running down one side of his face. The smaller one was female, her fur once white but now dull with age and cold. Ice crystals had formed on their whiskers and around their closed eyes. Yuna did not waste time. She grabbed the male under his arms and began to drag him toward her station. He was heavy, even in the low gravity of Vareth 9. Her muscles burned with the effort. The wind tried to knock her down with every step. She got him inside and went back for the female. By the time she dragged the second Felari through her door, Yuna was gasping for breath, and her arms felt like they were on fire. She sealed the door and pulled off her helmet. Then she got to work. The next several hours passed in a blur of activity. Yuna was not a doctor, but living alone on a frozen world had taught her many things about keeping bodies alive. She cut away their frozen outer clothes with careful hands. She wrapped them in heating blankets and set the temperature to rise slowly. Too fast, and their hearts could stop from the shock. She prepared nutrient injections and slid the needles into their arms. She cleaned the ice from their fur and checked their extremities for frostbite. The male's left foot was badly damaged. 2 of his toes were black and dead. The female was in better condition, but her breathing was weak and shallow. Yuna worked without stopping. She did not think about who these creatures were or why they had come to her planet. She only thought about keeping them alive. Sometime deep in the night, the male opened his eyes. They were amber-colored, bright and intelligent, even through the haze of exhaustion. He looked at Yuna with an expression she could not read. Then he spoke in a voice like dry leaves scraping across stone. The words were in Old Felari, a language Yuna did not understand. But there was something in his tone that sounded like gratitude. Or perhaps surprise. "Rest," Yuna told him, not knowing if he understood her. "You are safe now." His eyes searched her face for a long moment. Then they closed, and he sank back into unconsciousness. Yuna checked the female again. Her breathing had grown stronger. Good. They would both live through the night. She finally allowed herself to sit down. Her whole body ached. Her hands were shaking from exhaustion. She looked at the two sleeping Felari on her floor, wrapped in her blankets, and wondered what she had gotten herself into. The Vulcan Empire did not send its people to human worlds. They considered humans to be a lower species, useful for labor, but not worth their attention. For two Felari to be here, alone, in the middle of a deadly storm, something must have gone very wrong for them. The scars on the male's face told a story of violence. His ceremonial markings, the ritual cuts on his arms, that Yuna could now see clearly, spoke of high rank. Very high rank. Only members of the royal family carried markings like those. Yuna closed her eyes and let out a long breath. She did not care who they were. They had been dying in the snow, and she had saved them. That was what humans did. That was what she had been raised to believe was right. Tomorrow she would have questions. Tomorrow she might have to deal with whatever trouble followed these two strangers. But tonight she had done a good thing. Tonight, two lives that would have ended in the cold were still breathing because of her. Yuna pulled a blanket around her own shoulders and settled into her chair to watch over her unexpected guests. Outside, the storm continued to rage. Inside, the warmth held, and three hearts beat in the small circle of light against the endless dark. She did not know it yet, but this night would change everything. Not just for her, but for the entire galaxy. Morning came slowly to Vareth 9. The storm had died some time before dawn, leaving behind a world of perfect white silence. Sunlight reflected off the snow and filled Yuna's station with pale golden light. Yuna woke in her chair with a stiff neck and aching shoulders. For a moment she forgot about her guests. Then she looked at the floor and saw the male Felari watching her. He was awake and alert, his amber eyes studying her with sharp attention. He had pulled himself into a sitting position against the wall, and his hand rested protectively on the female beside him. She was still sleeping, but her breathing was deep and regular now. "Good morning," Yuna said. She stretched her arms and stood up slowly, giving him time to see that she meant no threat. The male said nothing. His ears were pressed flat against his skull in what Yuna recognized as a defensive posture. She walked to her kitchen area and began preparing food. Simple things. Warm grain porridge with dried fruit. Tea with honey. As she worked, she spoke in a calm and steady voice. "My name is Yuna. I am a botanist. I study plants. This is my research station. You are on Vareth 9, a planet at the edge of human colonial space." She paused. "Do you understand me?" "Yes." His voice was rough from disuse, but his pronunciation was perfect. "I understand." "Good. Are you hungry?" The question seemed to confuse him. He blinked at her, and for a moment his defensive posture softened into something that looked almost like uncertainty. "You are. Offering me food?" "Of course. You need to eat to recover your strength." Yuna brought over 2 bowls and set them down within his reach. "I do not know what Felari eat, but this is what I have. Grain and fruit. It should be safe for you. The male looked at the food, then back at Yuna. His eyes were full of questions. Why did you save us? Yuna sat down on the floor across from him, keeping a respectful distance. She picked up her own cup of tea and took a slow sip before answering. You were dying in the snow outside my door. What else should I have done? Left us there. His voice held no anger, only confusion. We are Felari. You are human. Our kinds are not friends. Yuna shrugged. I do not choose who to save based on their species. You needed help. I gave it. That is all. The male stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he reached for the bowl of porridge. He lifted a spoonful to his mouth and tasted it carefully. Something changed in his face, some tension that Yuna had not even noticed until it was gone. I am called Taiho, he said quietly. This is Bora, my companion. We are grateful. You are welcome, Taiho. They ate in silence for a while. Yuna did not push for more information. She could see that Taiho was still processing his situation, still trying to understand this strange human who had saved his life without asking for anything in return. When Bora began to stir, Taiho was immediately at her side. He spoke to her in soft Felari, helping her sit up, holding her steady when she swayed with weakness. The female's eyes opened slowly. They were deep green, like forest shadows, and they widened with fear when they saw Yuna. Taiho spoke again, gentle and reassuring. Bora relaxed slightly, though she still watched Yuna with caution. She does not speak your language, Taiho explained. I will translate for her. Yuna nodded and prepared another bowl of food. She handed it to Taiho, who passed it to Bora with a few words of explanation. The female ate slowly, her eyes never leaving Yuna's face as the morning continued. Yuna went about her normal routines. She checked her plant samples. She recorded the weather data. She cleaned the ice from her external sensors. She gave her guest space and time to recover in the afternoon. While Bora rested, Taiho found the strength to stand. He walked slowly around the small station, looking at everything with those sharp amber eyes. You live here alone? He asked. Yes, for 7 years now. Why? Yuna considered the question. I wanted quiet. I wanted to be away from politics and wars and the complicated business of civilizations. Out here, I can just do my work and live simply. Taiho nodded slowly. I understand this wish. I've wanted such a life myself, many times. He stopped in front of a small photograph that Yuna kept on her shelf. It showed a group of smiling people in military uniforms, their arms around each other. Yuna, as a younger woman, stood in the center. You were a soldier, Taiho said. It was not a question. Once, during the colonial wars, that was a long time ago. The humans in this picture, they were your unit? Yes, my family, really? We went through everything together. Yuna's voice softened. I am the only one still alive. Taiho turned to look at her. Something in his expression changed, a recognition of shared pain. War takes much from us, he said. I too have lost many who were dear to me. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Two strangers from different species, different worlds, different lives, connected by the simple truth that suffering was universal. Do you know what we are? Taiho asked finally. What I was, before I came to be dying in your snow. I know you are Felari. I know those markings on your arms mean you were important. Yuna met his eyes directly. But I do not care about that. Here, in my station, you are just two travelers who needed shelter. Nothing more. Taiho smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible, but it transformed his scarred face into something almost gentle. You are a strange human. Yuna, maybe. Or maybe humans are not what you think we are. He considered this. Then he nodded slowly. Perhaps you are right. Perhaps I have been wrong about many things. That evening, Yuna made a simple dinner for all three of them. Bora was strong enough to sit at the small table, and Taiho translated the conversation back and forth. They talked about small things. The weather, the plants that Yuna studied, the differences between human and Felari food. It was almost normal, almost peaceful. But as the night grew deep and her guests fell asleep, Yuna sat alone at her window and looked out at the stars. She could not shake the feeling that this peace would not last. The ceremonial scars on Taiho's arms marked him as royalty. The fear in Bora's eyes spoke of long years of running and hiding. Someone was looking for these two old Felari. Someone with power and resources and the will to use them. Yuna did not know when they would come, but she knew in her heart that they would come, and when they did, she would have to decide what kind of person she truly was. 3 days passed in quiet routine. Taiho grew stronger each day. He could walk without help now, and some color had returned to his gray fur. Bora was slower to recover, but she too was improving. She had even begun to smile at Yuna sometimes. Small, shy smiles that needed no translation. Yuna taught them both simple, human words. Oh, thank you. Please. Bora practiced them with great seriousness, and Taiho watched with something like pride in his eyes. On the morning of the 4th day, Yuna woke to a sound she had not heard in 7 years. The deep rumble of starship engines. She was out of bed in an instant. Through her window, she saw them. 12 Imperial dropships, black and gleaming, descending from the pale sky like metal birds of prey. They landed in a perfect circle around her station, their engines kicking up great clouds of snow. Before the snow had settled, soldiers were pouring out of the ships. Hundreds of them. They wore the black armor of the Vulcan Imperial Guard, and they carried weapons that could reduce her station to ash in seconds. Yuna's heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her throat. She turned and saw Taiho and Bora standing in the doorway of the guest room. Taiho's face was calm, but Bora's eyes were wide with terror. "They found us," Taiho said simply. "I'm sorry, Yuna. We should have left sooner." The door chime rang harsh and loud. A mechanical voice spoke through the external speakers. "Human designated Yuna of Earth Colony 7. You are harboring fugitives of the Vulcan Empire. By order of Emperor Dohan III, you will surrender them immediately. Failure to comply will result in your immediate execution." Yuna closed her eyes. She had known this moment was coming. She had felt it in her bones since the first night. Now it was here, and she had to choose. She thought about her quiet life, her plans, her solitude, everything she had built in 7 years of careful peace. Then she thought about Taiho's small smile when she had offered him food, Bora's shy laughter when she mispronounced human words, the way they looked at each other, two old souls who had survived so much together. She opened her eyes. "No." Taiho stepped forward. His voice was urgent. "Yuna, you do not understand. These soldiers will kill you. They have killed thousands for less. Please, let us go. You have done enough for us. More than enough." "No," Yuna said again. Her voice was steady now. "You came to my door. You are under my roof. Where I come from, that means something. Your customs do not matter to the Empire," Taiho said. "They will burn this place to the ground. Then let them try." Yuna walked to her communication console. Her hands were shaking slightly, but her mind was clear. She entered a series of codes that she had not used in 7 years. Emergency broadcast codes from her military days. Codes that would send a signal to every human ship, station, and colony in 17 star systems. A small light turned green. She was live. "My name is Yuna," she said, looking directly at the camera. "I am a botanist living on Vareth 9, at the edge of human colonial space. Right now, Soldiers from the Vulcan Empire are surrounding my home. There are hundreds of them. They have come because 3 days ago, I saved 2 Felari travelers from freezing to death in a storm." She paused to let the words sink in. "I do not know who these travelers are. I do not know why the Empire wants them. I only know that they were dying, and I helped them. That is what humans do. We help those in need. We do not ask for papers or proof of worthiness. We do not check their species or their politics. We simply help." Outside, she could hear shouting. The soldiers had realized what she was doing. They were preparing to breach her door. "The Empire says I must surrender these people or die. I say no. I say that any power that would execute a woman for showing mercy is not a power worth obeying. I say that kindness is not a crime, and I will not apologize for it." The door shook as something heavy hit it from outside. "If the Vulcan Empire kills me for this, let the galaxy see it. Let every human in every system know what happened here. Let them decide if this is the kind of galaxy they want to live in." She ended the broadcast just as the door exploded inward. Imperial soldiers poured into her station, their weapons raised. They screamed commands in harsh voices, ordering her to get down on the ground. Una stood perfectly still, her hands raised, her eyes calm. The soldiers surrounded her. One of them stepped forward and struck her across the face with an armored fist. She fell to her knees, tasting blood in her mouth. "Where are they?" the soldier demanded. "Where are the fugitives?" Una said nothing. She would not tell them. Even if they killed her, she would not betray the 2 old souls who had trusted her, but she did not have to protect them. Taiho stepped out of the shadows, his back straight and his head high despite his age and weakness. "I am here," he said. His voice carried the weight of authority, the voice of someone who was born to command. "Release the human. She has done nothing wrong." The soldier who had struck Una turned. He raised his weapon. Then he stopped. "You," the soldier whispered. His voice cracked with something that sounded almost like fear. "You are supposed to be dead. Clearly, I am not." Taiho stood in the doorway, and even in his worn clothes, even with his gray fur and his scars, he looked like a king. "I am Taiho. I am the one you have been looking for. This human woman saved my life. She knew nothing of who I was or why I was fleeing. Her only crime was compassion." The soldiers had frozen. They stared at Taiho like they were seeing a ghost, and perhaps they were. Una watched from the floor, blood dripping from her split lip, as the soldiers began to talk rapidly into their communicators. Whatever was happening, it was bigger than a simple arrest. Much bigger. Bora appeared at Taiho's side, her green eyes blazing with fierce protectiveness. She placed herself between Taiho and the soldiers, a frail old female ready to fight an army for the one she loved. Una felt tears in her eyes. Not from pain, from something else entirely. These 2 had run for years. They had hidden and suffered and nearly died. And still they stood for each other. Still they faced their enemies with their heads held high. Whatever happened next, Una knew she had made the right choice. Some things were worth dying for. Kindness was one of them. Commander G1 had served the Vulcan Empire for 40 years. He had fought in wars. He had put down rebellions. He had done things that haunted his sleep, all in the name of his emperor and his people. He had never hesitated. He had never questioned Dot until now. He stood in the center of Una's small station, surrounded by his soldiers, and stared at the face of a dead man. Taiho, the twice-crowned. The emperor who had ruled with wisdom and justice for 30 years before his own nephew had betrayed him. The emperor who had refused to sign the order for the Purge of Korath, a massacre that would have killed millions of innocent people. The emperor who had been declared a traitor and supposedly executed 15 years ago. But G1 remembered the execution. He had been there. The figure they had burned had been masked and bound. No one had seen the face. No one had been allowed to question Dot now, looking at Taiho's unmistakable features, at the ceremonial scars that only the royal bloodline could carry. Jiwan understood. The execution had been a lie. Taiho had escaped. And for 15 years, he'd been hiding, running, surviving. "Sir," one of his soldiers said nervously, "our orders are to eliminate all targets. What do we do?" Jiwan did not answer immediately. His mind was racing. Outside his dropship, his communication officers were in chaos. The human woman's broadcast had spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Millions of people were watching. 17 human colony worlds were demanding answers. The Galactic Trade Council had called an emergency session. Even within the Empire, noble houses were sending frantic messages, asking what was happening. This was supposed to be simple. Find the fugitives. Kill them. Return home. Instead, it had become the biggest political crisis in a generation. "Commander," Taiho said calmly, "I know what you are thinking. I know your orders. But I ask you to consider something." Jiwan met the old emperor's eyes. "Speak." "This human woman saved my life. She did not know who I was. She asked nothing in return. She simply saw 2 old travelers dying in the cold and chose to help." Taiho paused. "By the old laws of our people, the laws that existed before the current emperor rewrote them to suit his purposes, she is owed a life debt. Her life is sacred. To harm her would be to violate the most ancient codes of our civilization." A murmur ran through the soldiers. The old laws. Every Felari child grew up learning about the old laws. They were the foundation of their culture. The principles that had guided their empire for thousands of years. The current emperor, Dohan, had dismissed them as outdated traditions. He had replaced them with new laws that served his power. But the common people still remembered. The soldiers still remembered. "The old laws are not recognized by the throne," Jiwan said, but his voice lacked conviction. "They are recognized by our people, by our hearts." Taiho stepped forward, and despite his age and frailty, his presence filled the room. "You know what my nephew did, Jiwan. You know about the purge he wanted. You know about the innocents he has killed to maintain his power. Is this the leader you want to serve? Is this the legacy you want to leave?" Jiwan's hand hovered over his weapon. His soldiers watched him, waiting for orders. The moment stretched like a wire pulled tight. "I was there when they burned the body they said was yours," Jiwan said quietly. "I watched and did nothing. I followed orders. I have followed orders my entire life." He paused. "But there are some orders that a soldier should not follow." He lowered his hand. "Stand down," he told his soldiers. "All units, stand down. We are not executing anyone today." The tension in the room broke like a wave hitting the shore. Some soldiers looked relieved. Others looked confused. A few looked angry. But they all obeyed. Yun as slowly rose from the floor. Blood still dripped from her lip, but her eyes were clear and steady. She walked to stand beside Taiho and Bora, placing herself with them without hesitation. "What happens now?" she asked. Jiwan sighed heavily. "I do not know. I have disobeyed a direct order from the Emperor. When he learns of this, I will be executed. My family will be punished. My soldiers will be questioned and probably imprisoned." "Then do not tell him," Taiho said. "He will find out. He has spies everywhere." "Yes, but it will take time." Taiho's amber eyes were bright with intelligence. "And in that time, many things can happen." Jiwan studied the old emperor carefully. "You have a plan. I have hope, which is something I have not had for 15 years. Taiho turned to look at Yuna. "This human woman showed me that there is still goodness in the galaxy. There are still people who will do what is right, even when it costs them everything." If such people exist, then perhaps change is possible. Bora spoke then, her first words in the common language. They came out slow and careful, the words Yuna had taught her. Good people. Change world. G1 stared at the old female Felari speaking human words, and something shifted in his face. Something that might have been the beginning of tears. My grandmother used to say something similar, he said softly. She said that empires are not made of stone. They are made of hearts. And hearts can be turned. He made a decision. I will delay my report, he told Taiho. I will say that we encountered resistance. Technical difficulties. Anything to buy time. What you do with that time is up to you. That is all I ask. Taiho bowed his head, a gesture of deep respect. Thank you, Commander. G1 turned to leave. At the door, he stopped and looked back at Yuna. You are either very brave or very foolish human. Yuna smiled, though it hurt her split lip. Where I come from, those are often the same thing. The commander almost laughed. Then he walked out into the snow, giving orders to his soldiers as he went. Within an hour, the dropships were gone. The sky was empty again. Yuna stood at her window and watched them disappear over the horizon. Her body ached. Her face throbbed. Her small, peaceful life had been shattered in a single morning. But she was alive. Taiho and Bora were alive. And somewhere out there, a spark had been lit. Taiho came to stand beside her. I must leave soon, he said. There are people I need to contact. Old allies who may still be loyal. If there is any chance to remove my nephew from power, I must try. Will you come back? I do not know. He placed a furred hand on her shoulder, gentle as falling snow. But I will never forget what you did for us. The galaxy will never forget. You have reminded us all that there is another way to live. A way built on kindness instead of fear. Yuna thought about her fallen comrades in that old photograph. The family she had lost to war. The years of solitude she had used to hide from her grief. Maybe that is enough, she said. Maybe that is what I was supposed to do all along. Not hide from the galaxy, but show it something better. Taiho smiled his small, gentle smile. Perhaps. Or perhaps you were simply being human. And perhaps that is the most powerful thing of all. The revolution did not happen overnight. It built slowly, like a fire spreading from ember to ember across dry grass. Taiho, single quotes, S return from the dead, sent shockwaves through the Vulcan Empire. The footage of Yuna's broadcast played on every screen in every system. People saw a human woman stand alone against hundreds of soldiers and refuse to betray two strangers she had known for only 3 days. They saw her bleeding face and steady eyes. They heard her voice speaking simple truth to overwhelming power, and something in them awakened on the planet Kareth, where Emperor Dohwan had wanted to commit his massacre 15 years ago. The people took to the streets. They carried signs with Yuna's face and chanted words in a language they did not speak. Good people. Change world. The phrase had become a rallying cry. On the core worlds of the Empire, noble houses began to withdraw their support from Dohwan. The old laws were quoted in council chambers for the first time in years. Military commanders quietly refused orders that violated ancient principles of honor. Dohwan tried to maintain control. He sent his most loyal forces to crush the uprisings. He ordered the arrest of anyone who spoke Taiho's name. He threatened and punished and killed, but it was too late. The tide had turned. 6 months after that night on Vareth 9, Taiho walked into the Imperial Palace. He came not with an army, but with witnesses. Hundreds of noble houses sent representatives. Millions of citizens watched through live broadcasts. Human observers stood among them. Invited for the first time in history, Dohwan sat on the throne, surrounded by his remaining guards. His face was twisted with rage and fear. You are a traitor, He spat at Taiho. You are dead. I killed you myself. You killed a mass prisoner and called it justice. Taiho replied calmly. You have been killing ever since. Your own people. Your own principles. Everything that once made our empire worthy of respect. I am the emperor. You are a murderer who sits on a stolen chair. Taiho turned to face the watching crowd. I do not come here to reclaim the throne. I am old. My time has passed. But I come to ask this empire a question. What do we want to be? He paused, letting the silence build. For 15 years, we have been ruled by fear. We have been taught that strength means cruelty, that power means domination, that other species are beneath us and must be controlled. His voice grew stronger. But I have seen another way. I have seen a human woman, alone and unarmed, stand against our soldiers and refuse to surrender two helpless strangers. She did not ask what we could give her. She did not calculate her advantage. She simply did what was right. Taiho looked directly at the broadcast cameras. That is true strength. That is true power. And it is something our empire has forgotten. Dawan stood from his throne. His hand reached for his weapon. I will not be lectured by a coward and a traitor. Guards, kill him. No one moved. The guards stood frozen, their eyes on Taiho, their hands at their sides. One by one, they removed their helmets and stepped away from the throne. Dawan was alone. The removal of the emperor was bloodless. He was taken from the palace underguard to face trial for his crimes before a council of noble houses. The sentence would be exile, not execution. Taiho insisted on this. Enough blood had been spilled. In the months that followed, a new order emerged. Taiho refused the throne, as he had promised. Instead, he proposed something unprecedented. A constitutional council that would share power with the emperor. Elected representatives from every planet in the empire. And, most shocking of all, seats reserved for non-Felari species. The proposal was controversial. Many Felari still believed in their own superiority. They did not want to share power with humans or the dozens of other species in their territory. But Taiho had one final argument. A human woman saved my life, he told the council. She owed me nothing. I was a stranger from a species that had treated her kind as lesser beings for generations. And still she carried me through the snow. Still she stayed awake through the night to keep me alive. Still she stood against our soldiers when they came. He shook his head slowly. If that is what humans are capable of, then we are fools to exclude them. We are fools to exclude anyone who might bring such strength to our empire. The vote passed. Not unanimously, but decisively. The first non-Felari member of the Constitutional Council was Yuna. She had not wanted the position. She had returned to Vareth 9 after the revolution, hoping to resume her quiet life of plants and solitude. But Taiho came to her personally. He told her that the empire needed her, that her presence would be a symbol of the change they were trying to build, that her voice would speak for all the species who had been ignored and marginalized. She thought about it for 3 days. Then she packed her bags. The council chambers were vast and beautiful, built from white stone that gleamed like ice. Yuna walked through them in her simple clothes, looking very small and very human among the tall Felari nobles. But when she took her seat and looked out at the gathered representatives, she saw something she had not expected. Hope. In the eyes of Felari and humans alike. She saw Hope. Taiho sat beside her as an advisor. He was too old for official duties now, but his wisdom was valued. Bora sat in the gallery above, watching over them both with her gentle green eyes. Are you ready? Taiho asked quietly. No, Yuna admitted. I am a botanist. I study plants. I do not know anything about politics. Taiho smiled his small, gentle smile. You know what matters. You know that people deserve kindness. You know that everyone has value. You know that doing what is right is more important than doing what is easy. He placed his furred hand over hers. That is enough. That is more than enough. The council session began. There were arguments and debates, compromises and frustrations. Building a new order was hard work, and there would be many difficult years ahead. But something had changed. Something fundamental. The story of Yuna and the frozen strangers spread across the galaxy. It was told in human colonies and Felari cities, in space stations and trading posts, in schools and homes. It became a legend. A reminder that one person doing one kind thing could change everything. Years later, when historians wrote about the fall of Emperor Dohan and the transformation of the Vulcan Empire, they would point to many causes: political pressures, economic failures, military overreach, but they would always come back to the same moment, the same turning point, a storm on a frozen world. Two dying travelers in the snow. A woman who opened her door. Yuna lived to see the new empire flourish. She saw humans and Felari working together, building something neither could have built alone. She saw the old laws restored, updated for a new age. She saw the galaxy become a little bit kinder, a little bit gentler, a little bit more like the place she had always believed it could be. And sometimes, late at night, when her duties were done and the council chambers were empty, she would stand at a window and look up at the stars. Somewhere out there was Vareth 9, her small station, her plants, the place where everything began. She did not regret leaving. She did not regret any of it, because she had learned something on that frozen night, something she would carry with her for the rest of her life. The galaxy was vast and often cruel. Empires rose and fell. Wars raged and faded. But kindness endured. Compassion survived. The simple act of helping a stranger could echo across centuries. That was the human legacy. That was what they brought to the stars. Not weapons or conquests. Not power or dominion. Just the stubborn, foolish, wonderful belief that every life mattered. That everyone deserved warmth in the cold. That love was stronger than fear. And that was more than enough.